Well, get those live fast zipped and clips, strap down those rods, and stow away those tackle bags because we are going fishing. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bass to Anglers podcast. I'm your host, Keith Niswanger, and I hope this episode finds you with 5 fingers on each hand. Happy 4th of July, everybody. I hope you're enjoying time away from work with friends and family. On this most sacred holiday, we celebrate our nation's independence and that most important constitutional amendment, number 2, the right to bear arms.
Get her done.
Thank you, Larry. Seriously, perhaps you've seen that meme that's making its way around the interwebs. 14,500 Americans will wake up today with 10 fingers for the last time. I looked it up. On average, there are 14,500 fireworks-related accidents that happen to Americans on the 4th of July weekend. So be careful out there. I hope this episode does find you with 5 fingers on each of your hands. Camus Boats, from the mind of Earl Bentz. Excellence, tradition, and service, all part of the Camus advantage. On the water, perfection. This is your next boat. Build your next boat at camusboats.com. Ducket Fishing, pro-driven rods, reels, and baits. The choice of champions. Check out ducketfishing.com to see what everybody's talking about. Ducket Fishing, pro-driven. Copper State Tackle is the new wardrobe partner of the Bass to Anglers podcast. Today I'm wearing the Copper State AFCO Country DNA hooded sun shirt. Keep your eyes open, probably down here somewhere, for our affiliate code that allows you to save 10% on tackle and gear from their website, copperstatetackle.com. Today we've got kind of a cool deal. From time to time, I like to go into the archives and pull out some magic moments. I often refer to these as gold nuggets because they are just really, really special. It might be a fishing tip, might be an old-timey story, something that's pretty cool because they're just really special. In this episode, we've got gold nuggets from Josh Bertrand, Ben Milliken, Matt Stefan, and Kelly Jordon. Pretty cool stuff that you're not going to want to miss. In 2023, Josh Bertrand won the Juan Bass U.S. Open on Lake Mojave. During our discussion, he shared an absolute golden tip regarding forward-facing sonar. Check this out. When you're looking at LiveScope and you're talking about being able to tell the difference between a bass and a carp and a catfish, a tip or two about that. What's the difference?
Sure. I mean, it's a good question. And a lot of it comes to just getting a trained eye and practice it, right? But there are some key giveaways. And what's funny is every lake, it's going to be different because you have different types of, you don't want to call them a rough fish, but I just use that term for this example, you know, bass compared to another species of fish, whether it's a catfish, a carp, a walleye, a drum. Yep. The bass are going to be always a little bit more of a solid mark because they're really dense fish, especially smallmouth. The smallmouth are so muscly and meaty that, you know, when you see one on your live sonar, I use LiveScope, it's going to be a better echo. You're going to have a more solid white dot.
Like a bright star.
Yes, that's a great way to describe it. It sounds like you're pretty familiar with it too. But yeah, it looks like
I've seen a few, but I cannot sit here and tell you I could tell the difference. But when you're talking the way you're talking, it's making sense. And I know that what I've seen are really bright stars on that scope, and that makes sense.
It's very apparent. It's brighter. It's a harder return, whereas the other fish are going to leave a duller return.
I've seen that too.
The way that they position for sure, right? Like, and size, right? I mean, hey, if it's a 20-pound carp, it's going to look a lot bigger than a 3-pound smallmouth, obviously, right? Yeah. But you know, the way they position, you know, this is something that you have to learn every time, every new body of water at every time, right? Because one week the smallmouth might be packed up. The next week they might be roaming by themselves. And same with the carp and catfish. One thing that was really interesting at Mojave this week was the catfish were really schooled up. So like you would see a school of these catfish and think the first couple times it's like, look at that school. Oh my God, you pitch in catfish. And you learn, you do that a couple times, and then ultimately you start to see that school that and you don't pitch into them now.
Right.
And if you're not sure, you pitch. If you're not sure, you throw at them, right? But I think, and that was probably a big advantage for a couple of the other guys. Like I know Spencer is one of the best, forward-facing sonar fishermen on the planet, and I guarantee he wasn't wasting time pitching at fish that weren't bass.
Ben Milliken joined our podcast this past year, and we were able to get him to start talking about forward-facing sonar. What an absolute treat to listen to this guy talk. I mean, Ben Milliken has done many a deep dive into forward-facing sonar, and to get him talking, he just spills some of the most amazing thoughts about the whole concept of forward-facing sonar. Randy, feel free to fast forward through this section of the video if you'd like. Talk a little bit about how you use live electronics.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words on the videos, and we've been trying to incorporate a lot of the live footage on the screen of what I'm actually looking like. I think
it is really cool. It is really
cool. It's been fun. I mean, it's changed the way I fish big time. Been using it for almost 4 years now. I think three plus years at least. And I mean, I can't say anything more than it's flat out changed the way that I approach new fisheries. It's even changed the way that I look for new places, new bodies of water to fish and film content at. I'm looking for deeper, cleaner body of waters all the time. It seems like, because that kind of lends itself a little bit more to fish being more visual feeders and having a propensity to track down bait in the open basin and deeper water over deeper structure and cover. And so that's kind of the type of areas and lakes that I look for a lot of times. But man, I could give a 6-hour seminar on how it's changed the way I fish. But it's changed the tackle that I use. It's changed the baits that I use. And truthfully, and I try to really portray this on my channel, my videos, it's allowed me to learn quicker and more efficiently than anything I've ever done with my fishing. A lot of people that are jumping in the game now are seeing forward-facing sonar as a way to just a way to fish, and luckily I was able to fish for 30 years before live sonar came out, and really get my background and my fundamentals down and everything. But now that I established that, and I can put that in conjunction with forward-facing sonar and a variety of different baits, it's deadly and super efficient for sure.
You mentioned a really interesting point to me. I hear about the anti-live scopers out there, and one of the big complaints is that young bass anglers aren't going to learn, and I get the fundamental aspect of it. But I feel like the people that I interview on this show are so much further ahead than we were, when I was a youngster. And I think that you learn an awful lot more about fish movement from using live scope, because they're here one day, you got to find them the next day, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, and it's definitely it's very complex, obviously, and the younger generation does have an advantage in being more technologically savvy, I would say. But at the same time, I feel like it's so important to establish your fundamentals in fishing, or you're never going to have a chance to even present a bait properly or position the boat properly. You can't just hop on a boat with live scope without any background in even like serious bass fishing, and really have a chance. Because I've got buddies that I've met in the fishing industry and through the social media stuff that aren't necessarily good anglers, and you give them live scope on the boat and they have no chance of catching a fish with it, or even seeing the right fish or knowing what they're looking at. So there's definitely a lot more to it than just plugging it in and starting to catch fish better than people that don't have it.
Well, it is a new tool. It's the latest tool. You know, there was a time when our boats didn't have trolling motors, and then we got trolling motors. And there was a time when our boats were made out of aluminum, and then the fiberglass boats came along, and then the bigger horsepower motors and things like this. I wanted to ask you why is live scope such a controversial subject?
That's a really great question. I think it's because we have a tendency as humanity and society to repeat ourselves and not learn from our past judgments on things. You know, just like people thought paper graphs were cheating
Right.
once people had that, and people
Right.
thought 2D sonar was cheating. People thought side imaging was cheating. They thought GPS was cheating,
GPS, yeah.
and they're just tools to help us learn more. And fish get conditioned to everything. So really live scope, I mean, it's just another tool. I mean, I think that they see or hear about people just going out and, oh, they could see a fish and they casted to it and they were able to see exactly where it was and how to catch it, and then they caught it. So that's cheating. But in reality, I mean, nature always finds a way. These bass are always learning and they're always getting conditioned to pressure. And I know that the question all the anti-live scopers are always asking is, well, where do you draw the line? What comes next? Well, what comes next is going to be something a little bit better, and it's just going to be another tool, but the fish are just going to keep evolving. And so we have to keep evolving as well as anglers.
Have you noticed uh fish when they get pinged by a live scope? Have you noticed fish responding to that?
So bass, I've never seen a bass as many hundreds of thousands of bass that I've watched on live scope. I've never seen one where I beamed to it and it got spooked or stopped in its tracks or anything like that. That's not something that happens. But what I do notice is in lakes where they get live scoped a lot, they get conditioned to baits falling on top of them and
Yeah.
getting spooked that way.
Okay.
Because I mean, I got to luckily one place, OHIV, if you're familiar with the lake. It's super clean, and pretty much everyone just live scopes there. It's what we started there. They watch the video. Now everyone goes out there and does catch big fish. Well, those fish had never had pressure their entire lifespan or several generations of their lifespans, and so they had never had pressure. Well, that's a great example of a lake now where they're strictly getting used to people throwing on top of their heads in wide open spaces. Because, you know, before a live scope, you'd have to get lucky. You have a 1% chance maybe of casting on top of a fish in the middle of the lake, 20 however feet deep water.
Yeah.
Now that there's live scope, they're hearing Alabama rigs and everything else splash on top of their heads, even if it's 20 feet above them, and that makes them a lot more weary. And so places like that, you really have to um, dial your cast in and figure out how far away you need to cast your bait past them, or a lighter splash or a more natural presentation, stuff like that. But yeah, I'd say it's fish are getting conditions in lakes where they get live scoped a lot simply from baits hitting on top of their head or near on top of their head. That's what I've noticed.
That's an interesting comment. I've heard some guys tell me that they think that it's comparable to like trolling motor noise and stuff like that, that it might affect the fish. But you know, I think what you say makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Fish see a lot of baits and they're going to react.
I've pinged other species of fish and spooked them for sure. I know that crappie do get spooked. I've seen schools of big gizzard shad definitely get spooked. They feel it. I've seen gar that can feel it and get spooked, but never a bass.
So, in summary, live scope fishing is not cheating, or it is cheating.
I mean, fishing's whatever anyone wants to make it. I mean, some people want to sit on a bucket with a can of worms and catch them. Other people want to have 15 graphs on their boat and spend $200,000 on their boat. It is what it is. People can say it's cheating, and people can say that a paper graph or 2D sonar is cheating if they want to as well. But I'm just using the best technology that's available to me.
Right, and I've heard you say that in your videos a few times, referring to cheating. But you're embracing the technology. You're not that guy that says "get off my lawn" to the kids and that stuff like that.
Of course not. Of course not. And I'm gonna try, especially as I continue. I'm gonna try not to get set in my ways, because there will be something coming that's gonna be better than live scope and better than our version of live scope. So you always got to keep your eyes open.
Matt Stefan won the Major League Fishing Invitational on the Mississippi River. The winning was great, but he's got a spectacular barge and lock story that you're not going to want to miss. What point did you think that you had the tournament won or had the chance to win? I'm guessing you thought you had the tournament won. You found out on stage, I'm guessing, is when you really discovered it. But was there a time, and you were up there as the tournament went on, so when did it begin to dawn on you that, hey, I might be in the right place?
Yeah, I thought I first started thinking I actually had a shot at this event after I caught my 16 and a half pounds on pool 7. So, you know, each day we had a barge in the lock first thing in the morning. So we didn't get up to pool 7 until 2 hours at least into the beginning of the day. So we lost a lot of time from that standpoint. But so the first day I started fishing around 9 o'clock, and I had 16 and a half pounds right at noon. And then I locked back down at that point. But it was sitting in the lock coming back where I was like, 16 and a half pounds on the Mississippi River in the summer is a really good bag. And I thought to myself, I'm like, man, I made a quick pass through there. I didn't even like really milk it. I had caught, I think my bag consisted of one that was almost 5 1/4, a couple of 3 1/4, 3 1/2, and then the others were like 2 3/4. So they were really good quality fish, and I did not fish it tough. So at that point, I was like, I actually might have stumbled onto a pretty good area. In terms of actually winning the event, the Steve Lopez was fishing the same exact way I was. I didn't know that until like halfway through the tournament, but we were doing very similar things. But he had found several schools of fish, and we were catching them really fast. So when it came to the last day, I really thought I would need 16 plus pounds to have a shot. So I never really thought throughout the tournament that I had a shot until the barge debacle on the way back, where we're all waiting to lock through, and Steve asked me what I had, and I told him I had a little over 15 pounds, and he said he had 13 and a half to 14. And at that point I was like, oh my God, I might have the winning fish, but oh my God, I'm not even going to get to weigh them in because the barge is going to lock us out. So it was a it was a really weird experience to find out. It was almost in a way I didn't want to think I had the fish that could lead me to a win, because I didn't want to go through the agony of I had the fish to win, but I lost the tournament because I didn't get to weigh him in.
Yeah, I can't remember where I heard this. Maybe I heard this on your channel or something. But Tom Mansour is in there with you guys, right?
Yep.
He makes a phone call to somebody, and that works out. How did that shake out?
Yeah, so I don't know the exact specifics, but we're allowed to call the lock masters and talk to them and find out, is there a barge coming? Is there not a barge coming? The problem with that is the river is meant to be used as a travel route for barges, right, more than pleasure boats, and we're considered pleasure boats. So the barges have priority. And when we have big tournaments like this, generally what happens is the anglers really kind of upset the lock masters because they're consistently calling them, hey, where's there a barge? Can I come through? And it's a pain in the butt for the lock masters. So it gets to the point where a lot of times they just don't answer the phone. And Tom being a river savvy guy, and this is something I learned that I'm gonna go out and purchase, but he had a marine radio, and he actually could talk to the barge captains. He could listen to the barge captains talking to the lock masters. Wow. So he knew what was going on. And he's got the phone numbers for everybody. I mean, Tom is, the king of lacrosse. He is the king of that river. He's been there his entire life, and he knows everybody. And so I don't know. I know he came over to me about an hour before weigh-in, and he told me, he said, well, I just talked to the lockmaster, and the lockmaster's response was, you better start praying to have any shot at all to get through. So it was pretty grim. Yeesh. And like a half hour later, so I mean, right around 12 o'clock, or I'm sorry, 2 o'clock, and we had the check in at 2:30. You're looking at, like, in an ideal world, 25 minutes to get in the lock, get situated, drop the water, lock doors open, and then we had a 5 mile or so run to get back to takeoff. So you're really looking at 25 minutes. and all the anglers getting together talking, we were like, if we're not in there by 2:05, we really are probably not making it. And at 2:00, so, to give a little more backdrop on it. So there were probably, I'm going to say 10 boats, 7 to 10 boats at this point that made the final day, but we were all like in the top 10. I mean, you're talking the majority of the top 10. When we first got there, which was 12:30, 1:00-ish, so several hours before check-in, we all, the boats are all talking. Everyone is kind of not joking around, but, hey, how was your day? Very cordial with each other. And by 2:00, everyone kind of went like this. We all just kind of went by ourselves, because it was like you didn't feel like talking. I felt like throwing up, to be honest with you. And like at 2:00, I heard Tom laugh. Tom has a very defined, make you smile laugh. And I hear him laughing. And I turn around and, he's over by another boat, and he comes idling over to me. And he just looks at me. He goes, Matt, I made a call. We're going to get your fish in. You're going to get the way you're fishing. And I just looked at him. I said, Tom, I don't know what you did or who you called, but I know Tom. So I know he's got, like, not that he can just make stuff happen, but he's got connection. And
sure.
I just looked at him. I said, Tom, whatever you did, whoever you called, thank you. And it was like, at that point, I turned and I looked at the lock, where you can see the guys moving around, like, and they went from kind of just walking around to, like, not running, but hustling. Like, so whatever happened, there was, there was a fire lit under the guys up there. Wow. And they got us out. And then the lock masters did a phenomenal job of like directing us. So as we were pulling in to the lock, they gave us a quick green light, allows us to go in the lock. At that point, we're going in, and they were like shouting directions to us as we're coming in. And then they immediately get the door shut, immediately start dropping us. And as it's dropping, they came back through, and they're giving us more directions. As soon as those doors get to this point, you can go. Make sure you go left around the bulkhead, because that's not no wake as soon as you get around, versus having to go no wake all the way to the end. And they just did a great job. Like, wow. They did a phenomenal job to get us through at that point. And I'm just very thankful that happened, because Keith, I don't know how I would have handled it had I won the tournament, but not won the tournament.
Kelly Jordon shared a magic moment with us recently following his win at Lake Eufaula. It was a Major League Fishing Invitational win. Listen to what Kelly has to say about the homework that he does before an event using Google Earth, and then listen to the way he protects this sacred water that he found. It's a great story, and you're going to enjoy listening to this. Plus, Kelly uses the word extrapolate in this video. I don't know that I've ever heard a Bass Pro use the word extrapolate. Check it out. In some of the post-event articles I've read, you credited your pre-tournament research. I'd like to hear a little bit more about what that is. Tell us about your pre-tournament research.
So the study I did was Google Earth and satellite finishes. I mean pictures, and the going back in time, looking at the older photos, trying to find the research, and hopefully you can hit a time when maybe it was during a flood or a drought, and it kind of gives you an idea where there might be pockets of clear water somewhere where you wouldn't think to look. Also, just looking for, trying to get the character of the lake. And a lot of stuff I look for is just little stuff, little bitty deals off the beaten path, just subtle things that might be missed, and that you could take advantage of. And did a lot. I mean, I spent a day and a half pretty much in my office just scouring that and looking for just any kind of deal in case. So I'd be prepared when I got there for any water level. That's why I did that.
Well, you clearly found something special this past week. And did you see that on Google Earth? Is that what led you to
Pretty much. You can't really see it, but you can intuitively know it's there. Because I do this most season. Most pro that we do this is part of our study, part of our homework. Wasn't really visible, but it kind of was if you looked around it. And I kind of expected that there might be something there, and there was. And it wasn't. I wasn't sure it would be there, and I did have to look for a while, but I did find it. And when I did finally see it, it was not really where I expected it to be, but it was just kind of like a wow, look at that. I know. I mean, when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, they're going to be there.
Okay, so tell us, what was it that you found?
I found rocks in a place where no one would ever know there was rocks if they didn't know to look there. And they are not visible in any Google Earth photo that I found, because there was never anything with the water low enough to see that, except maybe a little more shadow there. Maybe whatever. But there were some surrounding features that led me to believe there might be something in that area. And I just looked. I mean, again, it's a little bit of geography, I guess. And I'm not a geography major or anything like that from college or anything, but you see stuff. There's rock veins continue, different features. Kind of sometimes there'll be a different place of them out there. You can just kind of extrapolate some stuff, and so I just off the wall stuff. And I looked for off the wall stuff because I knew that it might fish really small if the water wasn't high, and it did. There was people everywhere on some of the really good stuff. It was obvious.
Well, I find that fascinating. The whole idea of using the Google Earth. I get the concept of how it's used, but to hear you talk about, what you saw and what you thought was probably there, that's pretty good stuff.
And I really liked my plan, and I liked the stuff that I had, and I had a plan of how to move through it. I had some timing with it as well. And it did not go according to plan, because I didn't catch much at all at my first stop. I caught a 7-pound limit, if you can believe that. It was terrible.
That's quite an accomplishment to catch 5 for 7. That's pretty good.
Yes, I was very disappointed in and I had never seen one that small in practice. And I was catching those fish a lot on mostly in square bill, and it was a lot more off-color water than where I ended up catching most of my fish. That was disappointing, but I kept running my stuff, but at the same time, this stuff that I had found on the lower end in the clear water, I was very confident in it because it was so awesome looking, and I knew I would figure it out better in the tournament. But when I found it, and I waited until there was no one in eyesight, because it's kind of offshore, but it's not. I just played defense really hard. I got out there and made 2 casts with an open hook. I was, going to hook one of them. I didn't catch one my first cast. My second cast, I caught a 4.5 pounder.
That's not where you ran to at the start of the first day. You went there later.
I ended up getting there about 12:30-ish the first day, maybe 1 o'clock. And there were a couple people around in the area fishing. Some of them may have been high school people, but I kind of stayed way away and watched it because I had some other stuff close. And as soon as everybody filtered out and there was no one around, but I pulled up, and in about 10 or 15 minutes, I caught 4 fish in cold. Every fish I had that wasn't the 3-pounder, and I quit. I said, I have almost 17 pounds. And it was so exciting because I had been struggling all day with little fish, and I catch 4 good fish, 3.5 pound average. Boom, 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 boom.
Okay. Now day 2, how did that unfold? Did you go straight to those fish on day 2, or did you save them again?
I ended up getting down to, my hot, area that I found. So I went over there and immediately started catching. I caught 17 pounds, 15 ounces by noon. So an hour and a half. And then the wind turned. That's when our big front came through, and the wind started blowing 30 miles an hour, and I never had another bite.
Now, day 2, I watched quite a bit of the broadcast on Major League Fishing Channel, and it was funny because Marty Stone, nobody could see Kelly Jordon catching fish because you didn't have a camera in your boat. Marty Stone said, his voice. I bet you Kelly's found himself some sight fish. I think that's what he's probably doing. If I know Kelly Jordon, he's sight fishing. And so, I know Kelly Jordon too. He probably is sight fishing. So when we saw you on day 3 with a camera in your boat, throwing reaction baits, I'm like, whoa, this is not what Marty Stone made me think.
And that's exactly why you do what I did. And I mentioned it during the day fishing on the third day. I said, man, I played a lot of defense in this tournament. But you can't win playing defense. You got to play offense. And I was questioning the way I had managed the fish I had because I was so excited about what I had found because it was so good. There was at least 2 schools in this area of big fish, and but the bottom line was I could not wait for the third day to get there because I wasn't going to be dumb anymore. I was going to run straight there, and I'm going to sit there all day, and we're going to see what happens.
Yeah. 22 pounds. Were you a little concerned when the wind was blowing hard on that last day?
Yes. So the last day, regardless, I knew exactly where I was going, exactly where I was going to, hang my hat, and we were going to see what happens. And a big part of that was, and this might have been a thing that helped me win as well, is I had a 6-pound deficit. I knew I had to catch big ones, and that's all that mattered.
Yeah.
Only chance I had was to catch big ones, and there's only one place I knew that had them for sure, and that was that one area. And it's a big area. It's 300-400 yards across with some really good rock piles and rock veins, some shallow water, some a little bit deeper water, a couple pockets. It's got it all, and it's all right in one area. But there was shad there. I actually caught 2 shad that morning on my vibrating jig. I mean, they got hooked on the big hook, and they were 3 inches, the same size as my vibrating jig. And I'm like, I know they got to be here, and they were. And I caught just what I needed. That was the most amazing thing. I'm like, why am I not getting bit? Why not getting bit? 30 minutes into the day, why am I not getting bit? There's shad up here everywhere. Finally, I get a bite. Guess what? It's a 5-pound. That's what you need to come back from 6 pounds down. I'm like, hey, there's one. 4 to go.
Absolutely.
A little while later.
Well, there you have it. Some great insight, great lessons, and some great stories. When you produced over 300 YouTube videos, you're bound to have a few of these. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Be safe out there. We'll talk to you again soon. I'm Keith Neiswanger. This is the Bass Tour Anglers Podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you'd like to reach us, please send us a direct message on Instagram at Bass Tour Anglers Podcast. Take care. Be safe. We'll talk to you next time.